Hi, I'm Cameron.
And I'm Hayden.
And this is
Until the End of Crime. Cameron, how do you handle conflict with your parents?
usually head on.
Head-on collision. You're ready.
Well, okay, as a collective or individually?
I guess either. However you want to approach it.
Okay, I probably let shit go until I don't let shit go anymore. So
do you bottle it up?
I wouldn't say bottle it up. I pick my battles.
Okay. Have you ever been taken to a point where you get particularly nasty?
I don't think so. I don't think that I get nasty with if I get to the point where I feel like it is worth engaging in anything that is argumentative with them, it's never motivated by me being nasty or trying to belittle them or anything. It's never that. It's me trying to point things out to them, whether they want to receive it or not.
Well, my mom taught me to go for the fucking knees. And so before I became an adult with I'm sorry, I cut you off, but you were talking about how you don't just like go for the nastiest, meanest thing.
No.
Would you like to finish? I'm so sorry.
I mean, I don't know what else there is to say, really. I don't like to go low. You've known me for 10 years almost.
Yeah. You typically don't go low. That's true. Now as a grown adult, I don't necessarily go low, but when I was when would it have started? Really, when I was 16, I had so much of the bullshit that I could handle from anyone and everybody. That started a revolution where anytime they fought with me, I went to the nastiest, ugliest, most unforgiving place I could. And I did that for years. And then, of course, my father died. And there was, I don't know, probably a good 6 months where I didn't have it in me to be ugly. It was just like too exhausting.
A good 6 months.
Well, that's true. Like and I guess my mom was less argumentative. She was going through a lot, obviously.
Right, you were all grieving.
Yeah. And so I don't think there was any time to be argumentative and to want to argue with each other. And I do remember when I finally moved back home after college and I was living at home with them, I had a particularly nasty fight with my mom about soda. At that point in time, I didn't drink soda, whether it be regular, diet, anything. I didn't drink anything carbonated. And she would get mad that sodas would be left out half drank. And that was reason enough for her to like yell and be mad at me and Miranda and Kyla and whoever else was there.
This was like when we were both living in that area, right?
Yeah.
This would have been when we were both there.
Yes.
Well,
Dustin,
yeah.
Heather, whoever, right? I don't even know who was in the house at that time.
I think Dustin was gone by then.
And I remember I was like, who are you talking to? Why are you talking to me about soda? And she was like, because everybody. And I said, no, not everybody. You take that shit somewhere else. I don't even drink soda. Who are you talking to? We had a big fight that day, like a 3-hour fight. And I think we both made each other cry.
It's sounding vaguely familiar, honestly. You have told me before about a time where you got in some massive fight and then you both ended up crying during that fight because, well, let's be honest. The two of you are both capable of spewing some vitriol.
Yeah, I get it honestly. Both of my parents were very good at it. I have grown and I choose to be kind. I don't talk that way to people anymore, even when they make me really mad. I don't think that's a burden someone should have to bear because words are very hurtful. Mm-hmm. And my mom and I have not argued like that in ages.
You remove yourself now though, don't you?
Right, 100%. And she never does anything that's like that.
So you're picking your battles.
Yeah, I think there's growth for both of us. But as mad as I've ever been at my parents, at my mom or my dad, I've never wanted them dead. I've never thought about causing them harm.
I've never.
When I was like 5, I remember running away from home. And of course I lived in the country and I don't even think I took shit with me. And I got halfway down the dirt road and I was like, fuck this. I wanted my parents to be beside themselves with grief, not able to find me, crying. And then I got halfway down the road and I was like, who am I kidding? I'm not walking anywhere. I thought I could make it to my grandparents. Oh, that was so stupid.
Is this the same dirt road that you had to come pick me up in? I was walking barefoot down it because it had rained so much that my car wouldn't have been able to go down the driveway.
That fucking dirt road.
And I had to walk a quarter of a mile? Or the driveway was a quarter of a mile?
I feel like probably between a quarter and a half, right? It's not just one lap around a track.
Well, I had to walk it because Jordan had already had to come and pull my Beetle out of there before, so I didn't do that twice. We both have memories of walking down this dirt road.
Yeah.
In unfavorable conditions.
One time I got I think I was probably 16 or 17. And should I have been driving down the road I was on? No. I had no business driving on this road, especially at the time I was driving on it. Old Cemetery Road, right? It's a dirt road. I got my car stuck.
Were you licensed?
I was licensed.
Oh, well then you had business.
But I think I was like 16 or 17. I didn't have any reason to be there.
Yeah, but 16 and 17-year-olds
Right.
empirically don't have reason to be there, but they have the car and the gas and they don't want to be home.
Yeah.
It's the only space they have actual control over.
It is. That's right. You're right. I got my car stuck. I called my dad and he and my mom came and they were just so irritated with me. And like, there was no break. There was no break. I was getting shit hurled at me left, right, center the whole time.
Physical shit or like
words?
Verbal. Okay.
Words, very angry words.
Like the time that you didn't want to get in the car after getting out at the school. You were like, no, I'm going to get in trouble. You're going to yell at me. I'm not going to yell at you.
Yeah, except I was old and I was like, fucking blow up my car. I don't even care. It's not worth getting bitched at like this. Like, blow it up. Get rid of it. Take it back. Take it to the dealer. I don't give a fuck. Get it out of my life because it's causing me a lot of irritation right now. I don't care. So, but... yeah. Also, just for the record, as mean as I've been, as hateful as I have been to either of my parents, I am in no competition with my siblings. I am easily, hate to say it, I doubt they would agree, I'm the nicest of the three. When it comes to being like, I watch them fight with mom and dad.
Okay, nicest, or maybe you are the
most respectful,
least combative.
That sounds fair. That sounds fair because... listen, they know how to do it. They know how to do it up. They know how to insult. Somehow those genetics got left behind in my mother's womb. And
well, the firstborn does leave genetic material behind in the womb.
Well, thank God I somehow fought that off.
Did you? Or do you carry some of Miranda?
Oh, I guess I always carry part of my sister with me.
Yeah, she left it behind in the womb.
So, while you and I have never wished ill on our parents, that's not the case for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, people kill their parents.
They do. Thank you for putting that in the beginning. Obviously, that's where it's headed.
Oh, well, it could just be a scheme.
No, the parents are going to die.
Oh my gosh.
They're gonna die.
We've been really hitting death very hard lately.
I know. I really wanted to do like a Canadian missing persons story, especially because your friend wrote that novel on our Facebook that I didn't respond to. Did you respond to it?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a universal kind of magic that surrounds Christmas, especially in suburban neighborhoods.
You're really stepping in my Christmas territory.
I'm gonna fuck it up for you today.
No.
Yar.
This isn't the lady that ends up under the Christmas tree, is it?
No, I'm never going to do that story again. I learned my lesson. You don't do stories that no one's ever talked about before. You don't do shit that was just reported on in newspapers. That's a lot of fucking work.
That's kind of what I did with Dilly on a Hang.
If there are only like a minute amount of primary sources and like maybe some secondary newspaper sources, it is hard to write a compelling case. It is hard if there's not anyone providing deeper analysis or putting parts of it together for you, because then you're left to do all of the analysis, the chronology, extrapolating motive, behaviors, which are things that are fascinating to you and I, and probably to the people that listen, but I don't want to have to put an entire story into context on my own. It takes so much work. And so this is not the same as that first ever attempt with Christmas and Shangela and Drag Me to Hell, whatever our podcast name was.
It was Fierce Crime.
But this story is very similar in that there isn't a whole lot of material on it. I think there's like one docuseries episode about it. And maybe I watched it the first time I did this case, the first time I started writing this case back in 2020. But a lot of my information today comes from a singular article from the Dallas Observer back in 2006. And it's a rich plethora of information. So while I did have to kind of do that with this case, I do try to avoid doing too much of the heavy lifting on my own.
Gotcha. Should we maybe give a little bit of a peek behind the curtain about how this podcast even began? Because you're talking about writing a case in 2020, and obviously we didn't launch anything until 2024, but also very obviously we did not actively work on this for 4 years. This has not been...
Yeah.
I would hope the production value would be better.
Well, I mean, this time there is production value, whereas the first time we were two people with computers and microphones that we just bought cheaply online.
And a dream.
That was cut short by work obligations and fear. Mm-hmm. And so, do you want to offer a primer?
Well, much...
Primer? I already started my case. Where are we? What are we doing?
Well, you just were talking about starting this case 4 years ago, and we mentioned Fierce Crime Pod and doing a Christmas thing, and it's derailed a little bit, but I do think that maybe people would be interested to hear that we actually kind of started working on a podcast 4 years ago.
Back to the universal magic of Christmas.
So if you want to hear a little bit behind the scenes, hang around at the end of this episode.
Yeah, you can get more of us, and that's it. There you go. What else would you want?
Well, more of us for sure. And then just some background information on your new favorite podcast.
There you go.
One of your new favorite.
Your new favorite podcast.
Yeah.
The new favorite podcast.
Well, I just am thinking about how Rebecca said that it's quickly becoming one of her favorites. So
Shout out, Rebecca.
Yeah. So I was kind of being facetious when I said your new favorite podcast, but then we've actually had people who don't know us say that it is quickly becoming one of their favorites.
That's so nice. That's honestly so nice.
Back to your story. Tell me about murder. Let's deviate from nice. Let's get into the naughty.
Well, don't worry. This one is fucking plenty naughty.
Well, it's Christmas, so
naughty 90s.
I'm going for the pun.
Naughty or nice. Mm-hmm. Well, some of these people need to be visited by, what is he called? Krampus? There's a universal kind of magic that surrounds Christmas, especially in suburban neighborhoods. Twinkling lights, front lawns adorned with holiday inflatables, and the promise of joy. In Mansfield, Texas, the Wamsley home on Turnberry Drive was a beacon of this exact festive spirit.
Where is Mansfield?
Near Dallas.
Suburbia, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, Dallas suburbia, unless that's wrong, but I think it's right.
Well, you're telling us about the magic of suburban areas.
Well, I know it's suburban, but I don't know if it's... I'm sure it's for Dallas.
A Dallas
It is
suburb?
Dallas. Mansfield is near Dallas. With its meticulously arranged decorations, it was the kind of house that made neighbors pause during evening walks just to admire the scene. But on December 11th, 2003, the lights at the Wamsley residence remained dark. By the next morning, what should have been the joyful heart of Walnut Estates had become a site of unimaginable tragedy.
Walnut Estates?
Walnut Estates.
All right.
Do you not like that? I fucking love walnuts. Like, I think they are a supreme nut, right below pecan.
Those are my two favorites if I'm gonna get into the type of nuts that I like, which is, I think we've talked about.
Candy-coated nuts, the ones that they do at the mall that are hot. Yes.
Candy-coated?
Yes. They're like covered with like praline and... like
the little way that you literally kissed your fingertips.
They're so good.
The ones that have like the sugar and the cinnamon and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, those are good.
Yes. You can get them at Buc-ee's.
I get them
all
at
year round.
The Renaissance Festival.
Okay. Sorry.
My family has gone there every year.
Sorry. Listeners, you couldn't see my face, but I was like, okay, why does that matter?
They heard your tone.
Okay.
They heard it.
But man, every time I go by Buc-ee's, you know, what a phenomenon in and of itself. They have those hot nuts ready, and it's literally a big sign that says hot nuts. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yes, bitch, work. Hot nuts.
They are good.
They're so good. They are so good. Oh.
But you
got me so off topic.
Sorry, but Walnut Estates it just feels like another southern thing. Like, I don't know that you go up north and you have Walnut Estates.
Oh, I bet you do. I bet you have like Maple Drive.
Drive, but Walnut Estates. There's something about that just feels really southern to me.
It's because it's nuts.
It is nuts. Carry on.
Well,
this conversation is nuts. Let's go.
Rick and Suzanna, or as most people knew her, Susie Wamsley, were found brutally murdered in their own home. What was initially seen as a random act of violence quickly unraveled into a story of betrayal, greed, and devastating loss.
What year?
2003.
That's what I thought.
This is the story of the Wamsley family, a story that reminds us that even the brightest lives can harbor the darkest secrets. Rick and Suzanna Wamsley were living proof that high school sweethearts could go the distance.
Gross.
Their love story began in Oklahoma, where Rick, a tall athletic teen with a charming smile, caught the eye of Susie, a striking redhead with a passion for art. Their connection was immediate, however, and I shouldn't have even called them high school sweethearts.
Is this the athlete and the artist?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they do end up getting together once they graduate from high school, but I think they always knew of each other and kind of held this kind of like imaginary torch for each other.
Well, if you think about being in high school, it would not be necessarily socially acceptable to be the athlete dating the artist or vice versa.
Yeah. And they were years apart.
Because I think if you were to talk to a lot of couples about what they were like when they were in high school, not that they went to high school together, but especially because if they didn't go to high school together, where did you fall in some sort of weird social hierarchy? Because they are at every high school. Every high school has a social hierarchy that doesn't make sense, but it is what it is.
Every workplace has a social hierarchy. Every place has a social hierarchy.
Yeah, it just feels stranger to me because I have seen firsthand, well, from experience, but I've also witnessed it firsthand. You know, I've had students in my classes that walk in the hall together, and then they come to my class and they don't sit near each other or talk to each other in the class, but they walk to class together.
Yeah.
So it's...
Or your only lunchtime buddies, or your only class buddies, or that's not my friend. That's just,
people that you would think are BFFs outside of your classroom literally don't speak at any other point in the day.
Those smaller micro ecosystems hold their own complexities that are so fascinating.
Yeah.
When you try to contextualize them in the grander scheme.
Yeah.
Anyway, Rick attended Oklahoma State University, earning a degree in accounting, while Susie pursued art at Oklahoma Christian College. In 1978, just 2 years after Susie graduated high school, they tied the knot. 7 months later, their first child, Sarah, was born on Valentine's Day.
That was the day I was supposed to be born. Well, I mean, not that year, but...
7 months later... 7 months later,
wow.
Their first child, Sarah, was born on Valentine's Day. I already fucking said that, which is how we ended up with you saying I was supposed to be born on Valentine's Day. Andrew followed 6 years later, completing their family of 4. Their early years were humble. Rick and Susie lived in a modest apartment before moving into their first home in Arlington, Texas. By 1995, Rick's career as a CPA in the oil and gas industry was thriving, allowing them to purchase a home in Walnut Estates, one of Manfield's most affluent neighborhoods. The Wamsley home quickly became a reflection of their success and personalities. Rick, who worked from a home office, spent his free time transforming their backyard into a peaceful oasis, and Susie's artistic touch was evident inside, where her eyes for detail turned every room into a warm and inviting space. Rick and Susie were more than just a successful couple. They seemed to be pillars of the community. Whether it was helping neighbors during emergencies or hosting elaborate holiday parties, the Wamsleys were really known for kind of being generous and kind. Susie got along with everybody and everybody liked her, which is a direct quote from Patty Clark, her neighbor. Susie's warmth extended beyond her family, and if a neighbor suffered a loss, it was not unusual for her to show up with some kind of food item or flowers. Their lives really revolved around their kids and their neighborhood.
Did you say what they do for a living?
Mm-hmm.
Good. I'm glad you did. Thank you.
Susie was a homemaker, and Rick was a very successful oil and gas CPA who I believe and understand to have created his own business after that.
And then he made the backyard an oasis, and her artistic touch was seen throughout the house.
They talked about how he hand constructed their patio and all of that jazz. Susie was known to really dote on her children. In some reports, it said that if Sarah and Andrew didn't like what was being served for dinner, she'd make them something else.
Did you choose this case because of Sarah and Andrew?
No.
Okay.
Nope. And she always kept Andrew's favorite brownies on hand and would order pizza for him and his friends when they would come over to play video games. Rick was usually really consumed by his work, but he would still make time for one-on-one outings. Sarah, their eldest, was a social butterfly, but was also known to be rebellious. During her teenage years, she clashed frequently with her parents over rules and expectations. And at 17, just weeks before her high school graduation, Rick and Susie reached their breaking point, and Sarah was kicked out of their home. Sarah supposedly moved in with a community college student that she had met, and that deepened the rift she had with her family. Sarah's struggles did continue into adulthood, and ultimately she was not diagnosed with bipolar disorder and struggled with issues of substance use and depression. At 19, she became pregnant and gave birth to a daughter. And that relationship with the child's father, Todd Cleveland, was pretty tumultuous itself. And it led to a really ugly custody battle that Rick and Susie actually ended up stepping into and supporting Sarah financially. But it was still really, really difficult for their family. And then Andrew, by contrast, seemed to be the good child, at least on the surface. Susie would dote on him, indulge his love for role-playing games like Yu-Gi-Oh! And by the time Andrew turned 19, there started to kind of emerge these personality traits that maybe aren't as desirable. So he began spending a lot of time at an IHOP in nearby Arlington. Supposedly, I know.
Yeah, I mean, it is tough when they start hitting the pancakes hard.
The International House of Pancakes. More like the International House of Mistakes. Honestly, I love IHOP.
God, it's probably been over a decade since I've been
A
to an
decade?
IHOP. Over, yeah.
He spent more time in the IHOP in nearby Arlington playing card games than he did at Tarrant County College, where he was enrolled part-time. His parents even bought him a white Mustang as a gift to encourage him to stay in school and stay focused on his future.
Okay, sure.
That didn't work.
I was like, how would that
Spoiler
work?
alert.
How about you dangle that and say, if this, then you receive the white Mustang. Ta-da! Look at me. I don't know the first thing about being a parent, but look at me go.
Yeah. It was at this IHOP that Andrew met Chelsea Richardson, a high school senior from Everman. Chelsea was bubbly and outgoing and had this kind of infectious energy that drew people to her, but her life itself was far from perfect. She had lost her father, a former Marine and iron worker, at a young age, and her stepfather had passed away in 2002. Chelsea had mostly been raised by her hardworking mother in a modest home and would often look to her friends for that kind of relational stability. For Andrew, Chelsea was everything that his parents weren't. Warm, carefree, non-judgmental, didn't care if he attended classes or not, and she didn't care about his grades or whether or not he lived up to his parents' expectations.
Okay, non-judgmental because she didn't care about his grades. And I feel like most high school relationships, they don't care about your grades.
Cameron, I don't know what kind of women, girls, ladies he was pulling. He fucking played Yu-Gi-Oh! Not to yuck anyone's yum, but this bastard was playing Yu-Gi-Oh!
So it wasn't so much about her being non-judgmental or anything like that. It was just about her giving him the time of day.
Yeah, could you imagine having been in high school and being like, oh, he plays Yu-Gi-Oh! He's a real cool guy. I want to date that.
Did not follow after his father in the athlete department or his mother in the artist department.
Who's to say?
Is Yu-Gi-Oh! A video game?
Yu-Gi-Oh! was a TV
cards?
show. It was literally a card game.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was like a fucking...
Duh, the IHOP.
I liked Yu-Gi-Oh! When I was in 3rd grade, and I didn't even really like it. I just thought it, like, I knew it was supposed to be cool. And they had these, like, watches they would wear that were not watches. They had, like, card spaces. And in the show, they would have to put their cards in a specific... Like, they were playing cards with these big monsters. And you collected the cards. And I think the big one, like the one that people really liked, was called Dark Wizard.
I think it was just too highbrow for you. You just didn't...
I didn't get it.
No.
It wasn't meant for me. That part of the culture is beyond me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was on at like the same time as Pokemon and Batman Beyond and other shit. It came on the WB. It would be on the WB after school. So Rick and Susie didn't really vibe with Chelsea. They thought that Chelsea represented this move of Andrew from being responsible to less responsible and kind of saw her as a bad influence. A girl who really didn't belong in the carefully curated world they had provided to Andrew. Still, Andrew remained devoted to Chelsea and spent most of his time at her home. By the summer of 2003, the Wamsleys were celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary. Their lives seemed to have stabilized. Sarah was living on her own. Andrew was making an effort to maintain his grades. And the family was preparing for Christmas, a season they cherished. However, there were tensions still bubbling. Andrew was secretly failing college, in danger of failing out, and his relationship with Chelsea was causing additional friction. And Sarah, while more stable than she had been, was still semi-estranged from the family.
I mean, when you said that the family was carefully curated, yeah, that would tend to drive children out because you're trying to force them to fit inside of a specific idea.
It does seem that was the case for most of their lives.
I also said high school, and you did not correct me, but they're in college.
Well, but he was dating a senior at some point, right? Chelsea was a senior when he met her in high school.
Okay.
So you're not wrong.
But that does still change it, because if he's the Yu-Gi-Oh high schooler...
He's the Yu-Gi-Oh
college
freshman.
But if she's in high school and he's in college, then she's dating a college boy.
Okay.
You see, it's different.
With a nice new white Mustang.
Yeah.
Who can just come and chill out in IHOP all hours of the night while she's working.
A Mustang that he can use to go get into any sort of other activity other than going to school. Yeah.
As Christmas approached, Susie and Rick decorated their home with their typical Christmas flair. The tree stood tall in the living room. The outside of the house shimmered with twinkling lights. And to their neighbors, the Wamsleys were just as joyful as ever. December 11th, 2003 was unusually quiet in Walnut Estates. By 9 p.m., the Wamsley home, typically glowing with festive Christmas lights, was still dark.
Because they were dead.
And for neighbors,
that at the beginning.
I know. For neighbors like Patty Clark, it was strange, but not alarming. She assumed that Rick and Suzanna, ever the social couple, had gone out for the evening. Rick and Susie had been preparing for Christmas all that week, okay, right? They'd been doing all of their Christmas moves, and while they were preparing their home for Christmas holidays, their son Andrew had been spending most of his time with his girlfriend Chelsea Richardson and her bestie, Susanna Toledano.
Not Susie.
Not Susie. This is Susanna Toledano. And these three had grown inseparable. They would spend all kinds of hours every night at IHOP playing games and talking. They really fucking loved IHOP.
Yeah.
To Rick and Susie, again, this kind of distance had troubled them, but I think they were kind of in the zone of what can we do, or what's like realistically our recourse. At 11:40 p.m. on December 11th, a silent 911 call was placed from the Wamsley residence. The dispatcher heard no voices, no cries for help, just faint static before the line went dead. Police were dispatched immediately, and when officers arrived minutes later, they found the garage door open and the interior door to the home unlocked. The kitchen remained untouched. No sign of struggle, no broken glass, but as they ventured further into the home, the grisly truth began to unfold. Rick Wamsley's lifeless body was found near the front door, face down in a pool of his own blood. He had been shot in the head and back and was stabbed 21 times. His bare skin bore the marks of a vicious struggle, a testament to his determination to fight back. So I don't know how many times he was shot, but he was shot in the back of the head and in the back. And he was stabbed 21 times.
But was he stabbed in the front?
I'm not sure.
Back? Okay.
Just a few feet away, on the living room couch, lay Susie. She had been shot twice in the head, likely as she slept. Blood cloaked the cushions around her, but the brutality didn't end there. Susie had also been stabbed 18 times in the chest and the neck, wounds inflicted post-mortem. The scene was really chaotic, and there were bloody shoe prints, and they immediately could tell it was 3 different individuals who were in the home just from those shoe prints. They crisscrossed through the living room, through the hallway. They found a broken hair clip and a clump of thick, dark hair found near Rick's body. Now, I want to say in one of the articles I looked at, it actually said that Rick had it in his hand, or that it was tangled in his hand, and then others say it was just found nearby, just as a heads up. Bullet casings and a knife with a snapped off handle were also scattered around around the home. Sergeant Mark Kelly, one of the first investigators on the scene, remarked on the sheer ferocity of the attack. He mentioned that Rick was believed to have fought them all the way through the living room and that he continued to do so to his very last breath. As the crime scene team began reconstructing the event that night, the picture really came into focus. Susie had likely been the first to die, asleep on the couch covered with a blanket when the first shot was fired at close range. The bullet pierced her left ear and through her head and killed her instantly. That's what they think is most likely. They also remark that they believe that she didn't have to go through the fear of seeing the killers approach her, which this is a terrible instance. And it was certainly, I don't think, an intended mercy. But if I'm going to be murdered, I guess I'd rather not know it's happening.
But for the record, I think I'm going to speak for both of us. We would prefer to not be murdered.
I don't want to be murdered. I do not want to be murdered. I don't want to die.
Well, that is coming.
Okay, maybe not. The aliens are going to come out of the ocean and make us live forever.
I don't think so.
Maybe. We'll see.
This is what you're afraid of.
Also, not an invitation for anyone to try to kill me, obviously.
Can you imagine somebody listening and they're like, well, I guess I was invited, so I'm going to have to show up.
Rick was startled awake by the gunshots, leapt out of bed, and confronted the intruders. Now, it's weird to me. Well, you know what? It's not weird to me. It does say that he confronted these intruders unarmed and nearly naked. So, but I mean, I don't like to sleep with clothes on. I run hot. So it's not that weird.
No, if you're woken up, you're in whatever it is you sleep in. And some people don't sleep in a lot or anything.
Imagine intruders are there and you're trying to put on pants. Put on a shirt.
Oh, no.
Protect your modesty if someone breaks into your home.
Somebody holds a gun. As you hear shots being fired off in your house, you're like, oh, gotta put up the twig and berries.
I gotta put on clothes.
Twig and berries, because we're keeping it Christmas.
Yeah, that makes sense. Holly berries. It's believed that Rick charged his attackers and grappled with them. Blood spatter patterns and the location of Rick's injuries suggest that he was shot again in the hallway, but still managed to fight back. So he was shot once initially, either in his room or by his room, and then again down the hallway. And then in his final moments, Rick tore a clump of hair from one of the assailants, and he was then stabbed repeatedly, which ultimately led to the collapse near the front door. The murders sent shockwaves through the community. Rumors swirled. Was this a botched robbery, a random act of violence, or something more sinister? The Wamsleys' home actually revealed a few clues that helped decisively eliminate some of those options. No signs of forced entry, nothing appeared to have been stolen, and in fact, investigators found $15,000 in cash tucked away in a bedroom drawer untouched.
What do you think that's like?
Which part?
Having money.
I think it's nice.
$15,000 in cash just hanging out anywhere?
Now that's wild.
Look, you and I, it wouldn't happen.
No.
It wouldn't happen.
Not even $1,000 in cash. I don't even carry cash. Now we are talking about the early 2000s. I don't know. Is that like the same as carrying $15,000 in your checking account?
Even that is.
I certainly never have that much in there.
No, I think I have $1.56 right now in my checking account.
The evidence left behind, the hair, the shoe prints, and the eerie silence of that 911 call hinted at a crime that was likely personal and premeditated. As detectives dug deeper, they turned their attention to the Wamsley's children, Sarah and Andrew. Both stood to inherit a $1.65 million estate, including an additional $1 million life insurance policy. Sarah, who had been estranged from her parents for years, was initially the prime suspect. Her history of rebellion, substance use, and contentious custody battle painted a troubled picture. But Sarah had an airtight alibi. She had spent that evening with her daughter and later provided detailed accounts of her whereabouts. Andrew, meanwhile, raised more questions than answers. He told investigators he had been with Chelsea at her home in Everman, playing mini golf and watching movies. And his story was corroborated by Chelsea's mother. But there were gaps in this timeline that investigators found suspicious. Adding to that suspicion, Rick and Susie's neighbors revealed an unsettling incident from just weeks before the murders. On November 9th, on
a warm November night, on November 9th,
The Wamsley's Jeep had been shot while driving to dinner. A bullet had struck near the gas tank. A chillingly close call.
Especially if you're in an action movie.
At the time, the incident had been dismissed as a random drive-by shooting, but investigators now wondered if it was an early attempt on their lives. I don't think I bring this up later in the story, which is my bad, but there is conversation that they saw the car that shot at them, and it was a white Mustang, identical to the one they had purchased for their son.
Yeah, a white Mustang in their name.
And from my understanding, their daughter Sarah was like, yeah, who the fuck do you think shot at you in a white Mustang?
So she was estranged, but not really estranged.
I said semi-estranged earlier.
Yeah, you also love a semi-estranged person.
It's real. It's authentic. It's human. Anyway.
Who am I semi-estranged from? Everybody?
Name them.
Everybody.
Well, not for a lack of trying to be totally estranged.
Literally.
As Christmas approached, the once cheerful streets of Walnut Estates were gripped by fear. Neighbors locked their doors. Neighbors locked their doors. Oh my God! What? Again?
You can do it. It's doors. Navies lock their doors.
Neighbors locked their doors and avoided evening walks. Some speculated the murders were the work of a professional hit, while others whispered about old...
Professional?
I know.
Did not seem professional.
Messy, messy, messy.
Took 3 people.
In the days following the murders, investigators pursued all of their possible leads. They questioned neighbors, friends, and family members. And Sarah Wamsley, again, their eldest child, was among the first questioned. Also, ballistic tests would later confirm that the same gun used in the Jeep shooting had been used in the murders. So they were able to confirm whoever did kill the Wamsleys were the same people who tried to kill them in November. By early 2004, the investigation seemed to have hit a wall. But in late March, forensic analyst... What the fuck is an analyst? What is happening?
I don't know, but you get so flustered when you make mistakes that then it becomes funnier because then you get worked up about it and then you
make more mistakes.
Make more mistakes because you get yourself worked up, I think.
An analyst. But in late March, forensic analyst delivered the breakthrough detectives had been waiting for. The DNA from the clump of hair found in Rick's hand, see again.
Inconsistency. Not inconsistencies, but in reporting.
Right.
Inconsistent.
The DNA from the clump of hair found at the crime scene, either near or in Rick's hand, matched that of a 19-year-old woman named Suzanna Toledano, Chelsea Richardson's best friend. Suzanna had again been a part of Andrew and Chelsea's social circle, but was considered kind of a peripheral figure in the case. Now she was at the center of the investigation. Suzanna also fled Texas after the murders and was tracked back to a relative's home in Illinois. And on April 4th, she was arrested and brought in for questioning. Under pressure, Suzanna Toledano cracked. She admitted to being at the Wamsley home the night of the murders, but claimed she was not the mastermind. Instead, she pointed the finger at Chelsea and Andrew. And according to Suzanna...
Yeah, Suzanna, go figure that you're not the one who decided that Andrew's parents needed to die because he was going to profit $2.6 million.
Yeah.
In what world would that have ever been born of her?
I don't know. But according to Suzanna, this plan to kill Rick and Susie had been in the works for months. The trio had initially tried to tamper with the Wamsleys' car, hoping to stage an accident. When that failed, they escalated their plans and then committed the shooting in November as their first direct attempt. And Suzanna did pull the trigger in this instance.
Why was this not investigated further? Why?
Well, again, I think that there was some conception that it could have come from Andrew's car.
Right. He's trying to kill you. So maybe we take action so that he doesn't actually do it. Sorry, I'm also coming off of, I was literally, before you got here, listening to a case where a kid gets his friends to kill his parents and brother so that he can inherit money, $1 million.
You know, there are so many people that are pretty easily manipulated.
Yeah.
I also think that parents always want to believe the best of their children. And sometimes when they do that, it does truly end up becoming a deadly mistake.
Yeah, it was the same in the case that I was just listening to. There had been several attempts on the parents' lives, and they had actually been told that it was their kid.
Several attempts?
Yeah.
That's one attempt is enough for me. That's good enough. I got it. You don't have to prove to me that you're actually trying to kill me. I believe you. Wow.
I mean, they weren't so blatant. It was like this, the shooting from afar.
Okay.
It wasn't like, oh, I tried to slit your throat and it wasn't successful. So now once you are healed, I'm going to try again. It wasn't that blatant, but in retrospect, well, there had been an attempt, and similar to, I would say, seeing the white Mustang and being like, oh, that's weird. Our son drives a white Mustang. Maybe it was him. There was something where the police said, hey, we had a report that.
But sometimes we can't even accept. It's not even that we can't hear it. We hear it and we just think it sounds preposterous. I have been told things about people that I absolutely could not believe, and they were true. They were correct. I think that happens. We think we know somebody. We think we have a relationship to somebody. And it's hard to believe when that's not the case. But it is. I imagine for a parent, that has to be just an incredible double bind. I don't know how you navigate that. I understand it to a degree. I understand why they would have a hard time telling the police, well, it did look a lot like our son's car. No?
Yeah. Yes, I understand. I get all of it. And I understand that it is difficult, but also with hindsight being what it is, it's frustrating when you see that these parents, at least to some level, have an awareness that their child has some sort of intent to do them harm, to literally kill them. I mean, I don't know what they thought they were gonna, if they shot in the gas tank, if they thought it was gonna just action movie style blow up. That's what I'm thinking. They probably thought. I don't know.
Probably, right?
I don't know.
Gas is highly explosive.
It is explosive, but I don't know that they're gonna.
It literally combusts.
I'm just thinking of a literal action movie. I don't know.
Let's Google it when we're done. Let's watch a YouTube video.
Okay. I understand all of that, but in the case that I was just listening to, and in this case, because they did not take it serious, people died. They died. I mean, it's not funny. They're dead.
Well, I mean, what do you call it? Survival of the fittest? Like, if you make the decision to ignore it, maybe you live with the consequences.
That you don't live.
Maybe you die with the consequences. I don't know. I feel like there's, in that situation, it doesn't sound like there was a lot of hope to begin with.
With Andrew?
Sure. I don't know. Now we're veering into dangerous territory. I don't want to come off as being an insensitive jerk/asshole or to trivialize this crime, but if
you have an awareness of it and you choose not to do anything with that information, then you're also, I guess, accepting what could potentially happen.
Yeah. Or you just, like what I was saying, you just can't accept that that's a possibility, that that's the truth, that could be the case. And in that instance, I don't know what anyone can do for you if you choose to bury your head in the sand. All of the preparation you could have done, all of the ways that you could have maybe mitigated the circumstances never happen because you choose to not see it. I don't know. Anyway, after their attempt failed at shooting the gas tank, they knew that they were going to have to be a little more active and kill Rick and Suzanna themselves directly. With Susanna's confession in hand, police moved quickly. And on April 7th, 2004, they arrested Andrew Wamsley and Chelsea Richardson in the parking lot of a Chicken Express near Chelsea's home.
Not IHOP.
Both were charged with solicitation of capital murder.
They were there. There were 3 sets of footprints.
At the same time, detectives turned their attention to it. I don't think that's their final charges.
It better not be, because they did more than solicit.
At the same time, detectives turned their attention to another member of Andrew's IHOP circle, Eladio Cardenas, a 24-year-old night manager who had befriended the trio. Where did he work?
IHOP.
Obviously IHOP. Oh, Andrew's IHOP circle. I already said it. Ilario admitted to providing the gun used in the murders, but obviously denied pulling the trigger. He claimed he had been manipulated by Andrew and Chelsea, who had promised him a share of the Wamsley fortune in exchange for his help. Ilario was charged with conspiracy to commit capital murder And because he's not really a part of this story, I'm going to go ahead and tell you he was sentenced to 50 years in prison. He became eligible for parole in 2014.
But he was not present at the scene.
No,
He
just
provided
conspiracy to commit capital murder.
Okay. He provided the weapon.
And he was denied parole in June 2016 and again in June 2017. And that's the most recent thing I can find. There was a detail from Suzanna's confession that really stood out. After killing Rick and Susie, the trio had waited for the news of the murders to break. When no one discovered the bodies, Andrew drove Suzanna and Chelsea back to his parents' home and then placed the silent 911 call and left the phone dangling off the hook to ensure that someone would come.
That was dumb.
Well, no one said these people were smart.
Clearly.
By the spring of 2005, the pieces of the Wamsley murder case had really come together. Andrew, Chelsea, and Suzanna had been arrested. Each faced the possibility of the death penalty, with prosecutors determined to bring justice for Rick and Suzanna Wamsley. The first to face trial was Chelsea Richardson, and she was widely believed to be the mastermind behind the murders. Prosecutors argued that Chelsea, fueled by greed and resentment, had manipulated both Andrew and Suzanna into carrying out the plan. Central to the state's case was the testimony of Susanna Toledano. She struck a deal with prosecutors early to avoid the death penalty. In a chilling recounting, Susanna described the events of December 11th in harrowing detail. And according to her, that night, the night of the murders, she received a text message from Chelsea that said, "Tonight is the night, get ready." Andrew and Chelsea and Susanna drove to the Wamsley home under the cover of darkness, armed with a revolver and a knife. Andrew used his garage opener to gain entry into the house, and they did find Susie first asleep on the living room couch. Susanna, for her part, says that she hesitated, but that Chelsea urged her on, whispering, "Go ahead, Susanna, you can do it." And then Susanna ended up firing the first shot, killing Susie instantly.
This is something I thought earlier as well, but if you know that there's another person and you know that guns go boom, it's stupid to not have at least located the other person. And like, I don't know, not that I'm trying to tell them how to get away with murder or anything, but it just doesn't feel like, I mean, again, it was dumb. It wasn't well thought through.
Yeah.
Like if she's sleeping, use the knife.
The whole thing is dumb.
I know, it's so senseless and stupid. And
so after killing Susie, they moved to the master bedroom where Rick had been sleeping but had been awakened. Susanna ended up firing twice, hitting Rick once in the head, supposedly aiming for his right temple. Rick was wounded and disoriented but fought back. So I don't know where the actual bullet entered his head, but he was shot in the head. And I know it was reported that he was shot in the back of the head. But supposedly, he charged at her. So there's some of this information that I'm not able to totally give you 100%. I know exactly how it went down.
I think
but the gist is there.
Yeah, because I don't think even Susanna would be able to recount it.
No, probably not.
Because of the adrenaline and how quickly it all happened.
Yeah. All of this began a violent struggle, and Rick did temporarily overpower Susanna, and Andrew intervened. Together, Andrew and Chelsea stabbed Rick repeatedly, ultimately delivering the fatal blows near the front door.
I was trying earlier to figure out who I thought did the stabbing, because that is the more personal, so I knew it was one of the two of them, even though you said there were 3 sets of footprints. But I could see either one, so I don't know.
Well, Chelsea, this bitch, the mastermind, she gets her friend Susanna to do all of the dirty work.
Right, to be the trigger guy.
And then Andrew comes in and says, "Oh shit, I guess I've got to help her finish it off." And I'm like, Chelsea ends up orchestrating this and keeps her hands clean.
Right.
Now, that didn't pan out for her.
No, but I would not have been surprised if you had said that she was the one who did all of the stabbing. Because this seems like it was thought from the perspective of somebody who does not have any sort of emotional attachment to these two people. And I think that Andrew did. I think it's just a complicated dynamic, but I don't think that he would have been like, "Oh, we should totally kill my parents." I think that she saw dollar signs and he saw her.
The jury deliberated for 3 hours before delivering a verdict, and Chelsea Richardson was found guilty of capital murder.
Yeah, 3 hours. It was not a lot of time. They were like, "She done did it, and we gonna kill her."
Yeah, the punishment phase, swift. Chelsea became the first woman in Tarrant County history to be sentenced to death. But even as the courtroom settled into stunned silence, questions lingered. Was Chelsea truly the mastermind? Had she been caught in a web of manipulation herself? In March of 2006, Andrew Wamsley's trial began. And unlike Chelsea, Andrew's defense team portrayed him as a victim, an impressionable young man manipulated by a domineering girlfriend. But prosecutors presented a different narrative. They described Andrew as a spoiled child who resented his parents' control and was willing to kill them for financial freedom. Ultimately, the evidence against Andrew was damning.
What do you think?
I don't see why it can't be both.
I was going to say, it definitely feels like somewhere right in the middle.
Right. Teenage boys are so dumb. They are so dumb. But I also don't accept the narrative that teenage girls are overly manipulative. Like, I don't know how many of them possess the skill to convince someone to murder their family.
Yeah, but you know that studies show that girls are very mean.
They are.
Even at young ages, they're mean and manipulative, and they're sneaky in the way that they work. When you were a teacher and you had to do your annual training, that's part of the conversation, is that girls don't usually operate out in the open, whereas the boys are probably throwing punches in the middle of things. The girls are operating in a very sneaky way. So yes, they're both young and dumb, but it tracks. That track. If she was the mastermind, which would be my opinion, that yeah, girls, they're sneaky.
It also makes me question her perception of family dynamics, with her father dying at such a young age and then her stepfather dying. It sounds like her mother did most of the parenting, most of the caregiving.
And was gone a lot. And so all she's getting about anybody's parents is he's talking about how awful and controlling his are and why he has to go and stay at her place all the time, which is also probably likely because there is a lack of supervision.
There was a lot of evidence against Andrew. First off, supposedly his DNA was found in blood spatter at the crime scene. Now, I don't know if that was blood, saliva, whatever. And then also the clump of hair in Rick's hand or near his hand was linked to Suzanna, which also kind of built this bridge as to how Andrew was there, how Suzanna ended up being there, that kind of common denominator. And then his own car, that white Mustang, lit up under luminol testing that was conducted after the initial investigation, revealing what was likely traces of Rick and Susie's blood. Now, I don't know if they ever DNA tested this blood, and I was kind of skeptical of this idea that they did luminol testing on the white Mustang when they already had so much else. But in one of the court documents, it shows where they did luminol testing on the interior of his vehicle and ended up cutting out these huge swaths for testing. So I don't know what the result of that testing was. I couldn't find it. Sometimes law documents are so dense that it's difficult to navigate the entirety of it, but that's my understanding.
Doesn't blood and bleach show up under luminol the same?
None of my degrees have the word forensic in it.
Same?
Yours is Masters of Psychology with a concentration.
Master of Science with my focus is psychology with a forensics concentration.
There you go. You got it. You earned it. You have it.
Yeah, it wasn't forensic science, though. We weren't talking about blood and bleach and luminol.
Listen, I want to talk about Clint Atchley for a moment.
Well, actually...
Clint Atchley was Andrew's childhood best friend.
Oh, and he's going to bring in all the other times that Andrew talked about killing his parents.
Well, interestingly, he does come to testify during Andrew's hearing, and he ends up testifying on Andrew's behalf, and with a heartfelt letter to the court, described Andrew as someone who was largely capable of redemption, even from behind bars. The defense then also argued that Andrew suffered from schizoid personality disorder, which they claimed made him vulnerable to Chelsea's influence. And these arguments did end up resonating with the jury. On March 10th, 2006, Andrew Wamsley was sentenced to life in prison without parole. For the first time, he broke down in tears. Susanna Toledano's cooperation spared her the death penalty, and she pled guilty to murder and ultimately was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole starting in 2034. Her testimony had been crucial in convicting both Chelsea and Andrew, but it did also highlight her own guilt. In a note to her psychologist, Susanna confessed, "I'm more guilty than either of them. I did wrong wrong and probably could have stopped it. In 2012, Chelsea Richardson's death sentence was commuted to life in prison after her legal team successfully argued that prosecutors had withheld key evidence. The withheld evidence included notes from Suzanna's psychological evaluations, in which she admitted to taking a more active role in the murders than previously disclosed.
Is that not privileged?
I don't know.
I'd have to go pull out my ethics book.
I know that you can subpoena anything. So when I was taking, obviously, my MSW courses and talking specifically about direct practice and mental health, one of the things that you're kind of advised is that you shouldn't include additional information in your notes that you would not necessarily want others or think others need to know. Because if you are subpoenaed for those documents, you are legally obligated to hand them over. There is very little that can be done to not cooperate with a government subpoena. So I know that those records they're not privileged in the way that they can't have access granted. While prosecutors argued that the omission wouldn't have changed the outcome, the court ruled in favor of a reduced sentence. And now Chelsea is serving life in prison versus being on death row with the possibility of parole.
No, I hate that.
In 2044.
Hate it.
I guess you have 20 years to contest it.
No, I don't think that you should have anything commuted from the death penalty to the possibility of parole ever. How old is she?
She was 18 or 19 at the time of the murders in 2003. My sister's age. 42? 41?
So she'll be in her early 60s when she's eligible?
Yeah.
Well, isn't the life expectancy in prison lower than on the outside?
Again, I have no idea.
I hope so.
It's weird because I'm kind of a different mind because she didn't do any of the actual killing.
She masterminded the whole thing. In my opinion, she is the one who put this whole thing into motion.
But she didn't force them to do the actual killing. She wasn't holding a gun to them while they were holding a gun or holding a knife.
I'm just saying,
if I convince you to do something crazy, you're still the one who did the crazy thing.
She was sentenced to death, and then they commuted that for what sounds like a Brady violation, but probably is actually just they didn't subpoena records that they wanted to subpoena in retrospect. I just don't like that she went from the death penalty to the possibility of parole. That seems obviously they felt in her sentencing in the original trial that she was a danger to the public.
But these notes revealed that Suzanna was more competent, more capable, and more understanding of the situation, an admission that she could have stopped it.
Yeah, but in retrospect, people say that, like, they say that all the time. If you find out that somebody in your family was in a car accident that killed them, you are like, I could have told them not to go or whatever. People do that all the time. In retrospect, people say things all the time.
Right.
She obviously felt so much guilt after the fact that to me, it almost sounds like it broke the spell that she was under. Like she was under a spell that she had been so convinced by.
Do you think she was a lesbian? Do you think Suzanna was in love with? Not that matters. That's so speculative and conjecture.
I was gonna say, how the fuck would I know?
But I can't listen. There's very few people in this world I would ever even think of killing for. It's really Andrew. And even then, I wouldn't kill somebody. Your face right now makes it look like you think I would. I wouldn't kill anybody.
We'll roll the tape back and listen to what you said. I'm going to put it in here twice. What you said. There are not a lot of people I would kill for, but there is at least one.
Well, yeah. Andrew. I mean, don't try to kill him. I'm going to kill you first.
Well, self-defense does not count.
Okay, that's still killing.
I'm nervous that we're alone right
Justified killing, but
with a would-be murderer.
The Wamsley family obviously was shattered. 2 were dead. Andrew headed for incarceration. And Sarah, who had fought her own battles and sought her parents' love and approval, was left to process the betrayal of her brother and the loss of their parents. To this day, to my understanding, she refuses to speak to Andrew. Andrew is serving his sentence at the Connolly unit in Kennedy, Texas, and has no contact with his remaining family. His appeals have been denied. The murders of Rick and Suzanna Wamsley left a deep scar, and not just on their family, but on the entire community of Mansfield, Texas. Again, a neighborhood that epitomized suburban perfection. The events of December 11th, 2003 became an enduring reminder that darkness can lurk in the most unexpected places. And that is the story of the murders of Rick and Suzanna Wamsley.
That's terrible.
It is. You know, I have been really, 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 really mad at my mom.
Oh.
And I've never thought.
I thought you meant like since researching this, it has made you mad. And then you were like, at my mom. And I was like, whoa.
No, I'm just tying back into the beginning when we talked about, you know, what is the cruelest way we interact with our family, or the things that we would do when they hurt us or upset us. And I have never thought about causing either of my parents any kind of bodily or irreversible harm.
Right.
Now, are there times I've wanted to hurt them with my words? Yes. That's been a long time. But still, 19-year-old Hayden had a lot of resentment. And so I think it's just so unimaginable to think I would kill anybody. Anybody. But for money, especially my parents.
What if there was a really cute boy telling you to for the money?
Yeah, no one's that cute. And I don't know what Chelsea Richardson looks like, but of course I was never stuck fucking playing Yu-Gi-Oh at an IHOP.
Look, we're not here to yuck anyone's yum.
Yeah, Losersville is the fucking population of these three.
Right. Well, yeah, they're murderous.
Actually, the four. Hilario. He gave him the gun. 50 years in prison. That's longer than the prison sentence for Susanna. Well, it's not longer than the prison sentence, but it's longer than it is if they achieved parole. Mm-hmm. That's longer than for any of the three. That's wild.
I enjoyed the storytelling, but I hated the story because it was so stupid.
Yeah, I hear that and understand that. It is a frustrating story.
Yeah.
And that it feels like there were maybe a few places where the course could have been corrected, but that didn't happen.
Just so senseless. And then right around the holidays too. Mm-hmm. Like, why? I would like to understand the timing of it. I don't know. It's...
Write to Chelsea Richardson and ask her.
Fuck Chelsea Richardson. I hope her parole is denied each and every time.
Now you sound American. I'm always talking about the other justice systems and you're like, fuck that.
I don't know. 1-star review from me for her because I can't give 0.
Yeah.
But you can give a 5-star review. You rate our show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening from. And we will have a complete list of sources and any links in the show notes there. And here's the continuation of our conversation about how Until the End of Crime came to be if you're interested. We spent about a year working on a podcast that we ended up... Mm-hmm.
A year?
It was just about a year because I had already...
Did we create anything worthwhile the first go around?
Yes. What do you mean by create? Like record anything worthwhile?
Uh-huh.
We did, but those episodes are no longer relevant because there were things, we were talking about things going on in our personal lives that are no longer the case.
Getting a master's in education.
Well, it was right after you finished your master's in education and I finished my master's in psychology. I was in a budding relationship that was snipped.
But you know what? That relationship... The way that relationship unfurled, I told you this before, I thought was really courageous. And I don't know if you have... Okay, well, I do know some of the feelings you have, but...
Don't know what you mean by courageous.
I mean, was it not with...
Yeah.
Yeah, you just got up and fucking moved and were like, all right, we're doing this. When you first got with him.
There. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think we should live with many regrets.
I'm not saying I regret it. I'm just saying that the episode content, we were talking about my new relationship.
Right. I know. So I guess part of point you're probably making is that there was a lot of transitory things going on for both of us. Mm-hmm. Not to mention a pandemic.
Right. And that's what I was saying, like a lot of people, because if you look at the numbers, 2020, there was a podcast peak of new podcasts. I want to say it's like 4 million is where the numbers were. New podcasts came out in 2020. And we were kind of part of that because we were trying to jump on that same bandwagon that everybody else was. And then we ended up not because it was a lot of work and it did not.
We thought that everything had to be so original, that everything had to feel fresh.
Oh, and we were trying to be too niche.
It wasn't the tea. The truth is that I love medical and crime procedurals, people watch 80 different variations of the same show because that's what they love. That's what they're into.
Right. That being said, a podcast that I used to listen to all the time that I really loved, I didn't realize until after we recorded, but they told the Vincent Brothers Joni Harper case. I had heard that case before. Yeah, which is probably why I knew about the mileage on the car.
LTCG, LTGC?
Yeah, let's go to court.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Which one told it?
Brandy.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's just go and do their whole back catalog. We'll just redo all of their cases.
Honestly, let's not.
I doubt they would appreciate it.
Well, there have been other cases that have come across my radar that they definitely haven't covered or that I don't remember them covering that I would like to have a go at.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know where to go from here. But I do think that some people, especially people who don't necessarily know us, they might find it interesting to know a little bit more about how this came to be. Because when we started this back up this summer, we had a lot of parts that were already created that we just had to
repurpose.
Fine-tune. Yeah, and repurpose.
That's, when we started the podcast, it was Fierce Crime. That was our original idea.
We would
talk about a true crime story.
Drag race episode crossover. It was way too niche.
Yeah, it didn't work.
No. It was as bad as it sounds.
Yeah, it did. We talked about season 3, episode 1 of Drag Race. And I think in that episode, it was like Christmas themed.
The Queen Who Mopped Christmas.
That's right. And then I told that story about the woman being found under her Christmas tree.
And I told you the story that I'm telling you for Christmas.
Where I feel like people get burned down in their home. Does that happen?
Please.
Okay. Sorry, let's keep some of the mystery alive.
Literally.
So that was the original premise, and it wasn't good.
No, it wasn't good. And we did switch to Until the End of Crime at that point.
We did. We knew that shit wasn't working.
But Until the End of Crime works.
Yeah.
That title, we did a good job with it.
We did. We
get compliments about the title of our podcast.
Yeah. I would love more compliments if you have them.
And I would really love for my family to jump on the same bandwagon that Hayden's family is on and to offer me compliments about what I do on the podcast.
You're so talented.
Stop it. I know. I said that to you and you were like, I'm so impressed by your editing. And I was like, I don't want this pity shit.
It's not pity shit. Could I do it? Maybe, but I don't want to. If you told me that I was going to edit episodes, I'd be like, no, I'm not.
Well, at first you were like, yeah, I will. Yeah, I just have to learn it.
It didn't happen.
Obviously. Yeah, I edit. I don't even know that we've talked about that before.
You are the editor.
I am our editor.
You're the sound engineer. I'm
the sound engineer? You're the sound engineer with your Vocaster.
Right, but you also put all of the extra music. Producer, you make sure all our shit gets posted on the RSS feed so then it then goes to all of the platforms. You do that. You manage our social media.
That's honestly the most difficult part.
The only thing I do is show up and react to your stories, and then
I provide the location, the recording studio,
and then I bring my stories. People don't know how much of the work you do compared to me showing up and just being entertainment.
And then they tell you how talented you are. You do such a good job.
I am.
This is true. You do, but I'm like...
Yeah, that's because you do so much of the work behind the scenes.
Yeah.
That's all for this episode. If you enjoyed listening and want to hear more, subscribe, turn on your auto downloads, and downloads in general drive traffic. They drive our ability to continue to make this podcast. And thank you. We just recently hit 5,000 downloads overall.
Don't forget to leave us a review and recommend us to a friend. Share us on your socials. Comment on our socials. Make sure that you are reacting. Post anything that stood out to you about the case. Please share it with us on Instagram or Facebook.
Yeah, even if you think we had a bad take, just post something.
The editing was terrible.
Yeah. Oh, and like us on Facebook at Until the End of Crime and join our discussion group.
Please reach out with any case suggestions that you may have or questions that you would like for us to answer on the podcast.
Thank you so much for listening.
Until the next crime.